Morning, everyone. It's 8:45. Welcome to the Land Bank meeting of February 21st. And we will call the meeting to order. And we'll open with we have 6 commissioners here. Good. Okay, great. We'll open the meeting with a public comment period. Any public comment? Any public?
And it looks like Judy and Andrew.
Are you recording?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, good. Yes, Judy and Andrew are here. Any comments from the public? Okay, hearing none, we will go to Vicki for our partner update from the San Juan Preservation Trust.
Minutes.
Oh, minutes. Thank
Everyone
you.
loves approving those minutes.
Right.
Sorry, Vicki.
Let's go back for a minute, for 2 minutes. All right, minutes. Commissioners, any comments, corrections?
I have to admit, I was somewhat confused, must have been late, by the notes on the side saying what time everything happened and then another number. And it took me actually a little while to figure out the other number had to do with the time from the start of the meeting.
It's the recording, but
Yes.
I realized after they went out, normally I put them in parentheses. I don't know if that's helpful either. That was a request from the public,
Yeah, oh, it makes
I
a
don't know,
lot of
months
sense.
ago. So I try to add the timestamps at least where things start.
Yes.
Sorry about that, Tim.
No, it's very helpful once I figured it out. Okay.
I like to keep you on your toes.
We can tell who's paying attention to the details.
Major point of order. Anything else?
No, everything else looked great.
Commissioners, anything else online and commissioners?
Well, if you're trying to go back and listen to a tape, it's really helpful if you know what time something was said. And often people, if I attend a meeting and then I look to see what time something is being said or talked about, so that other people that want to know, I can say, go to 10:30. Just a heads up.
Okay, that's useful. Okay, we are in public comment. Have a new member of the public come in. So any comments? Hearing none, I will close public comment. And actually we were in the minutes and I think the minutes are deemed approved because there were no comments on the minutes. Partner update, Vicki Edwards. Good morning, Vicki.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Vicki Edwards. I'm the Conservation Director for the San Juan Preservation Trust. I have one update today that's going to fold into an agenda item later that Lincoln will be presenting on the North Shore project. And the special session has been scheduled with the County Council for final review of the resolution for March 11th. And just really want to thank Lincoln and the County Council on requesting and considering a special session for the final review and hopefully approval of that conservation easement. It's really critical for us to be able to meet a stringent timeline associated with private donor requirements by the end of March. And as all of you have heard for many, many years now regarding this project, it's really complex and we have multiple partners, many donors that have contributed to this project, private and public. And we're working with, at a closing, a government entity, local entity with the Conservation Land Bank, as well as the Washington Recreation and Conservation Office, since funds were used for Salmon Recovery Funding Board, as well as Puget Sound Recreation and Acquisition Fund dollars. So a lot of moving parts here. And when you get things aligned, sometimes things don't go exactly as planned. So having a little buffer and being able to have that meeting, that special meeting on March 11th is really critical for us. if everything goes as planned, we're hoping to close on March 17th. We figured with a lot of work on our part, of course, and getting everything aligned and a little luck of the Irish, that we will be able to make that happen on March 17th. And so just also wanted to share with you all that on March 11th, Kathleen Foley Lewis, our Director of Special Projects, who has been the lead on the conservation easement, will be attending that county council meeting in person. I will be there as well to answer any questions. And so if anything comes up, we'll be readily available to respond immediately. And just want to thank you all. This has been quite the journey. I'm excited to move this forward and work through the rest of the process with you all. Thank you.
Okay, so Vicky, that special meeting is a public hearing, correct?
It is a public hearing, yes.
What are we both looking for in terms of support? What, anything needed from us, from our public?
Yeah, that's a good question, Brian, and I think that folks coming out and sharing with the council their support for this project is really important. And ensuring that the public view is being heard and on the record. You know, the complexity of these projects, as we've talked about previously, I mean, before we even have any sort of agreements in place and these opportunities arise, Angela Lincoln and I will meet and say, we've got this opportunity. How do we make it happen? Who does what? Who's on first, second? What role do you have? And to make these projects come together, it takes a lot of trust in the partnership and being able to make it happen. And each of the entities and our other funders going out on a limb to make this happen. The trust actually took out a $1.5 million loan on this project against our investments. At the time that the land bank acquired the property that we passed over 1.5 million, the land bank is an investment in the fee title acquisition without even being on the title. And so those sort of things, this trust and hearing the public say, this is what we need, so important for our county council members and then also the prosecuting attorney's office. So please show up and make your voice heard.
Maybe,
Thank you.
I'm thinking maybe we can turn out some of our land bank friends to support that, particularly folks on Orcas.
That would be
That's-
fantastic.
Let's all try to do that
Yeah.
for March 11th.
Thank you, Diane.
Okay, thank you, Vicky.
I do want to make one thing clear, that she just said about handing the land bank the $1.5 million for the acquisition. That actually wasn't handed to the land bank for us to then make the payment. That went directly into escrow. Otherwise, it would have shown up as a donation to the land bank
Very good point.
and then submitted, because there's been questions about how that process works in other projects, and I just wanted to make it clear that didn't come to us for us to make the payment. They put that in directly on the project to escrow.
Thanks for the
And
clarification.
I did notice in reading the easement terms that the consideration was $10. Thank you, Preservation Trust.
Old English law, Bill is.
It's a big help.
Follows us in every contract, doesn't it?
Uh, Okay.
Well, I just want to add, I so appreciate how the trust partners with the land bank, and it is amazing, the partnership. And in terms of showing up to show support, these projects, I mean, that one, you know, is definitely going to benefit Orcas, but it benefits all of us. So I think it's important to have people speak up from all the others
Yeah,
as much as possible.
and I think if Vicky and Kathleen, whoever from the trust tells that story, I believe your director remortgaged her house to help pay that.
It was a very challenging part. I don't think she had to do that, but we definitely put up our organizational funds as collateral for that. So, yes.
I know we heard that story this summer at our gathering, and it's,
Yeah.
I think it's really important for people who don't understand that to hear what it takes to put all the parts together, because it was a complicated one. So, thank you,
Thank you.
Preservation Trust.
Thank you.
Okay, So, let's see, is Councilmember Fuller is not here. Does anybody,
I think she's on vacation this week.
oh, is she? Okay. And I see that Marilyn has joined us. Good morning, Marilyn, if you can hear us.
Good morning, everybody. I'm sorry I'm not there. I just have to stay home for a little bit. So hopefully see you in person in a few minutes. I'm
We're
here.
glad you're here. Okay, so let's continue then with our chair and commissioners updates. Commissioners, anything? Peggy?
Sure. I was talking to Tim on the way over. It just felt like it's been a while since we've had a meeting, which is, I think says more to how much is happening in the world and for us. So a couple different things. I stopped by the Richardson Marsh, when Amanda was out there the other day and she was working more on the trail. And oh, there you are, Amanda.
She's here.
I really want to commend Amanda on her work, her good work. And, there she is out there by herself, moving rocks and getting the trail. And anyway, she's doing a great job and I really appreciate everything she's doing. A few of us attended a conversation with the Marin Agricultural Land Trust, so it was a phone call talking about how they do conservation easements, how they work in the agricultural field to protect farmland. And that organization has been around since the 80s. They do a fantastic job. And so it was really interesting to talk to them about their approach. Some of it is applicable to us, some of it is not, but it's still inspiring. I was able to join a conversation called First Light, and Doug set that up. And so it was a conversation about the Wapanaki tribes in Maine and the work that the First Light group is doing in terms of working with the tribes. 52,000 acres will be handed to the tribes. And anyway, it was just a very interesting approach and really interesting conversation. They talk about moving at the speed of trust, which is phenomenal. Because of the need to build trust with the tribes and really giving them the reins, and all the different efforts. And a few of us talked afterwards, how applicable is it to here? It's very different. But elements are certainly applicable. And then another thing I just want to bring up that I'm hoping that we can get on our agenda soon, and or figure out how to address the issue of staffing, which was on our strategic action plan. And so would really like to try to figure out how we can support staff, and get some support for kind of looking at capacity and all of that. So I'm not sure when that's going to happen, but I'd really like to put in my word for that this is really important.
That's on our future agenda items, so we
Yeah,
can
but I'd like to move it.
determine at the end of the meeting. I'm gonna ask for priorities.
Yeah.
Okay,
So, yeah, and just, of course, I went out to the Watmo Head, because I want to go out there and they've done some amazing work again. Amanda has, so moving
Good.
along.
and we're looking for an opening sometime this spring, correct?
May.
May,
Third.
May 3rd? Great, okay. Hopefully good weather
Yeah.
by then. Great, okay. Anything else from other commissioners?
I'll take a little bit. Let's see, Aaron put together a call that hasn't happened yet, but dealing with the NRCS agricultural lease or land easement, sorry, ALE. And to see if that would benefit the land bank in any way, if we can fit into that program and have another place to get grant money possibly for leases. Looking forward to that. There was no meeting of the climate change committee, but basically the climate element for the comprehensive plan is now at the planning committee and will be coming up for public comment and then going into the comp plan. There are a few things that the land bank would be involved in, some of them, most of them, the land bank is already working on, such as an incentive for, oh no, sorry, wrong one. Create a connected network of parks, open spaces, trails, and community gardens, which sounds very familiar because the land bank does that. One that was new, though, is a countywide forest health plan that I mentioned before, and we'll see how that goes along and what that entails, but I'm personally just very interested in that. And, oh, just a quick comment on the conservation easement for North Shore. I was reading through it, and I'm a detail person. I was amazed at how well it handled the difference between electric bikes and mobility vehicles for people with disabilities to get around. So it's a very difficult distinction to make, but it was done very well.
Yeah.
That's
Great,
about it.
thanks, Tim. I'll jump in for a moment on your comment about the climate element, which I think is an entirely new element in the comp plan. I've been paying some attention recently to the land use element, and particularly the land capacity analysis as it pertains to mostly to the urban growth areas, and basically what it's saying, and it's closely tied to the housing element, is that according to the Growth Management Act, we're going to come up short, particularly in East Sound Village, of the amount of housing that we're required to have. But it will also affect what are currently rural areas, partly because the urban growth areas may be expanding as a result of their shortfall, but partly also because the state laws are changing. And so we may see changes like changes to the current rules constraining secondary dwellings, ADUs. All of the state laws are changing. Apparently, there's a need to accommodate more people. So the changes in land use and zoning will also affect the land bank, and we should pay some attention to those things. So had my word about that. Any other commissioners? Peggy.
Well, somebody just yesterday brought to my attention that there was mention of the land bank in the housing section, and I haven't looked back to see that. Are you aware that it's someplace in some of the proposed changes?
I have not seen that.
Yeah, I'll find out and send a link.
Okay. How about our commissioners online? Anne Marie, good morning.
Yeah, I wanted to congratulate the staff on the nice piece that was in the Orcas newspaper, the printed paper on the council meeting. It was really thorough and kind of told everybody about when certain activities were coming up, like the March 11th meeting. So I thought that was really well done. And also I appreciated Aaron sending out the Land Alliance link, because that had just a whole lot of really good information and ways to connect. And then I was able to attend with the Garden Club, the North Shore Garden Club bird count, which Peter led, which was really, really well done. And so lots of applause to him. It was quite cold. There were some of our attendees who probably, I think we'd say, had accessibility issues, and it was icy, and he handled it really, really well. And they included an article already in their newsletter about it and encouraged people to get out to North Shore. And I think that most of the people, I don't think, had been there. Do you, Peter? So it was a whole new group, and they were incredibly excited. And Peter took them into some areas that I hadn't been into yet. So there was just a really, it was cold and they were looking at birds, but they were so impressed with all the work that the land bank had done there. It was very, very sweet and very uplifting kind of thing. So congratulations.
Thanks, Anne Marie.
Great. Thanks, Anne Marie. Marilyn.
I haven't had a lot of time in the last month, but I did take a day off and go to Orcas, and I just wanted to report that, as Peter already knows, I inspected Fowler's Pond for the red-winged blackbirds. They were fabulous. And then I went to Judd Cove and just had a wonderful visit down there. So I'm a little bit more familiar now with the fact that you've got a project going on there. I got over to Coho Preserve for the very first time and
Wow.
did not fall down, did not slip in the mud or the ice, even though my dog was trying to make that happen. I was very impressed with the high level of maintenance on the trail, even in such crummy conditions. And I also managed to stop at the our historical easement on the old cafe. And I ate pizza there too. So anyway, thank you very much, Peter, for all the work that you and your crew do. I was really impressed, and I hope to get to Lopez soon.
Thank you, Marilyn.
Thanks, Marilyn. Okay, Amy, anything?
I will say that I took a nice hike last week on the Lime Kiln Trail, and there were a lot of trees down, but they had all been cleared. So kudos to the staff for keeping that trail clear. Some big madrones in particular. And I had a nice chat with Lincoln this week just to sort of catch up, and we'll look forward to more of those in the future. Thanks.
Great. Okay. Good. So unless there's anything else? No. No. Okay, then we will move on to the director's report. Lincoln.
Very good. I've got a few items for you here. First up is the False Bay Creek mitigation plan. And just looking, I think you've all had a chance to look this over and over and over. So I think I'm just looking for approval to move forward. I did get some suggested changes from Eliza this week.
At the last minute.
At the last minute. So I'll be talking to Public Works about that. I think that some of those are important. Really just tying up a few loose ends more than anything else, but I think we're ready to go forward with this and get this agreement signed.
I have just a little question. Talk about elevating the road in certain sections so it gets out of the floodplain. How are they gonna do that? Usually you bring in dirt. No.
Well, this is why I went to school and studied engineering. Now really do not know exactly what the plan is.
That's a good, yeah, anyway, that'll be a major little task.
Yeah, absolutely. So, questions on that item? If not, look, is there a motion?
Entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the, what do we call it? I move that we approve it.
The False Bay Creek mitigation plan.
The False Bay Creek mitigation plan.
I think Marilyn seconded or has a question.
Marilyn is seconding?
Yes.
Yes, okay. I would only add one comment. I'm not sure whether this is an amendment, but I'll just restate what I've said before is that I would like us to attach a copy of our mitigation policy to that when we do it. But that being done, I'll look for approval. All for approval of the False Bay Creek mitigation program. Aye. That's unanimous. Done.
Excellent. I will say that I have had conversations with Jessica, the county manager, and Jane, our liaison, about the mitigation policy. So they are pretty well aware of how the commission is wanting to approach these things. we'll see how that goes moving forward. Not the easiest thing, honestly, but who knows? Okay, next up, this is really, something that we haven't done, in the past that much, frankly. But in the interest of added clarity, especially for council action, what I'm looking to the commission for is two things. One, approval of the conservation easement for North Shore that we've worked on with the Preservation Trust. You've had an opportunity to look that over. It meets all conservation easement standards, mostly, meaning you can't use a regular stapler to put it together. No, sorry, that's a little flippant. Very detailed conservation easement, a lot of exchange back and forth between our staff and the Preservation Trust, and I think we've got a really good easement. The second thing will be to just approve the sale of that property, of that conservation easement interest in that property to the Preservation Trust. Any questions on the easement or the process?
You want separate actions, Lincoln? Or can we wrap?
Yeah, I think approval of the easement and then a second motion to approve the sale of the easement to the trust. Okay. Something like that.
We can do that. Okay, commissioners, any questions, comments?
I'm just impressed at how well it has gone. It would be nice that if this could become more commonplace, so it wouldn't have to take as long, because I know the time constraints can be really difficult. But it's a great thing as far as I'm concerned, and yes, I think it should be approved.
Okay. I'll just ask one quick question, and maybe of Peter and Lincoln. I did actually a fairly quick read through of the language in the easement, and I agree with previous comments that it's amazingly detailed and well covered. The one thing that I didn't see and wondered about, and I may have missed it, is, and I'll ask Peter, is there any plan in the plan for interpretive signage, and is that allowed in the easement?
It is allowed, and actually the trust's grant application included funding to develop signage, both that was required for the removal of the building, so signage documenting the recent history of the site as a agritourism hub, I guess. And we also elected to do a comparable sign about the Native American history of the property, just the area generally. So yeah, those signs are in kind of the early stages of development. We plan to get them in 2025, and they're going to be funded by that grant that the trust received.
Great, that sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'll just add that, Kathleen did a great job of kind of rolling with an ever-changing property while developing, the easement and the present conditions report, which Megan Howard at the trust prepared. But it was a shifting situation, so I think they did a great job of capturing that.
So is your recommendation, Peter, has everything been covered that you need covered?
Yep.
Okay,
It looks good to me.
good recommendation. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I guess then we're being asked to take two separate votes. The first for approval of the conservation easement with the San Juan Preservation Trust. Do I have a motion? Okay, I think I saw it too. Anne Marie is making a motion to that effect.
Yes.
All right. I will second that. All in favor? Aye.
I,
Unanimous approval. Okay, second motion to approve the conveyance, the purchase and sale
Correct.
of the property and the conservation easement. Another motion, please. Anne Marie. So moved and second.
So moved.
Okay,
Who seconded? Brian?
I did, yeah. All in favor? Aye, unanimous again. Thank you. Done. Moving right along.
All
good
right.
job.
Yeah, that's,
Not an easy one.
and it's been a long process,
Has been well worth it.
but yes, thank you. Thank you, trust and staff.
So a couple of other items not listed here. One is the resale of the 2 lots at Fraser Homestead to the National Park Service. That's something which will come in front of the council on the 18th at a public hearing, and hopefully we'll proceed. We don't. Getting harder and harder to tell what will happen and what won't with regards to the federal government, but hopefully we're far enough along in the process that that will occur.
I was just wondering, Lincoln, we can't get that on the same agenda on the 11th?
Not at this point.
Okay.
I hope a week won't make any difference. We'll see. Yeah, very, very difficult times. The second thing is the conveyance of, the acquisition of property on Blakely Island from the Department of Natural Resources. We did get a letter for the county to sign, basically an agreement to move forward on that acquisition. That's with Jessica right now, and hopefully we'll get that signed by the end of next week. Their goal is to close on that transaction by sometime in June. Just to remind everyone what that program is all about. The Department of Natural Resources and the legislature basically have this trust land transfer program, which allows the legislature to purchase a school trust land and then convey it to a local government at no cost to the local government. And that's what we're talking about. This is a 185-acre property. It's the first thing you see in the right hand. You're coming in on the ferry.
Is that east?
It's most north, really, northeast. But this is the first piece of property you see coming into San Juan County. Very steep, interesting piece of property with very little access. It is also the last school trust land we have in the county. All of the others, there were 25 on the list. I was looking through the 1986 document. There are 25 school trust lands. All but one were conserved. There was one property on Lopez that was conveyed to private ownership. Otherwise, this is it. So pretty remarkable for us as a community to have accomplished that.
And will there be an inspection by the Land Bank Commission of this property?
Ropes.
Airdrop you in. It's really
Heaven's
It's really hard. The access is through property owned by the Crowleys. And so we need permission from them to get onto the property. We'll see what we can set up. It would be great to have a field trip out there.
I love it.
So, and as I recall, Lincoln, it's basically not only virtually inaccessible, but there are not any expected maintenance costs. We won't have to do much with it.
Right. Yeah,
Just preserved.
right, exactly. Also interesting, it is, the shoreline is pretty much completely, enhanced by, kelp beds. So it's one of the longer shorelines we have that has, kelp on it.
Has it been logged before, do you know, or?
Probably at some point, but again, there's a lot we don't really know about the property. And it will be great to get out there and actually be able to take a look and then leave it alone.
Okay. So you're not looking for an action on that, you're
No.
just information. Good, thank you.
That's all I've got.
Okay. In that case, we're doing well, we're way ahead of schedule, but we'll go on to the outreach and communications report. Tanya, you ready?
I'm ready. Not too much to report that isn't in the stewardship report. I can speak to the birding events that also happened through the land bank. Margot organized all the great backyard bird count related events, and we had Aaron Halcomb led back-to-back birding events at Third Lagoon Preserve last Saturday, which was very well received. Some big excitement about, if I get this right, a Cooper's hawk that took out a green-winged teal. I learned that one.
Wow.
I mean, I'm meeting people in the grocery store who were telling me stories. And then Kim Middleton, many kudos. She led a birding event at the same time at Jed Cove Preserve, in addition to the one that Peter did. And so it was a really great partnership. We hope that we can do more with the Garden Club on Orcas. Seemed to be well received. Thumbs up from Anne Marie. And then still working, Margot and I are back and forth with the design, the website, tweaking the preserve page. Yes, Peggy.
So Amanda also led.
Oh,
one
yes, thank you. On Lopez,
at the-
Amanda
And I
and
did
Beth.
go to that, but
You
yeah,
did,
Amanda
okay.
did that.
Yeah. Beth, St. George from the Lopez Island Library, and Amanda led it at,
Fish Bay Preserve.
Fish Bay Preserve, yeah. And I think they were all full. So, I mean, there seems to be a real desire for more birding, so we'll talk about that and see, how that works out with, our partners that lead those, and.
Can I
so-
just
yeah.
interrupt and interject something? I happened to be listening to NPR on the radio this morning on my way to the ferry, and they had a little interview thing about their bird note program, which probably a lot of you are familiar with. Turns out that bird note is one of the most popular programs on NPR. It's self-supporting through donations only, donations and grants, and people just love it. They love that program, want more, and some of you know they've put out a book and so on. So, I mean, birding is immensely popular, and so this is good news. We've latched onto a good thing.
Yeah, birders. They're definitely it's an easy moving bunch. You don't get very far. But a good time. So yeah, website still in process, and I've sent off the draft content outline for the annual report to Partners in Design. So we'll start talking about that and putting things together. And just planning, trying to get events on the schedule and sort out, we'll do farmers markets again, and again, partner with the Noxious Weed Board. That seems to work really well sitting together. So, pretty much in the planning stages. to go through.
Brian, I just want to go back to birds for a second. I think it's of interest that my son found a full-grown, mature bald eagle dead in his yard a couple days ago, with no apparent injury, and called WDFW. They're supposed to pick it up today, and they'll be checking it for avian flu. But in the meantime, he found out that, and I didn't realize that we do have avian flu among the native bird population now here.
I've been seeing lots and lots of good land bank stuff in, the papers, particularly the digital papers, the Orcasonian. So we've been getting out there. It's been really good.
Oh, and Anne Marie, the one you mentioned on the Orcasonian that describes the council meeting as well as the future public hearings. Aaron Andrews put that together for us in conjunction working with Lincoln, trying to, have something ready to go after the council meetings. I think she's really trying to get council meeting notes out there as quickly as possible. So, it's nice to have something in place and then fill in the blanks after the meeting. So I'll let her know.
She's
I'll
done
pass
a
on the
great
kudos.
job.
Yeah, she really is.
I wanted to ask you about, could you say a little bit more about the website and, who's doing it? And, I was also curious, have you asked for any public input into that from users?
I've not asked for public input. People love to give input randomly through email. Mostly what we're doing is updating language, so getting rid of the maps per se and putting more photos on. And I have to call out, Peter Fisher has been very generous. He took a lot of photos last year in conjunction with the Renew the Land Bank campaign. And he has given us license to use them at no cost, just hopes for photo credit. So we'll work on that as well. Incorporating iNaturalist and eBird into the pages so that people will have an opportunity to see what type of wildlife are on there. We'll be able to sort through activities. So for example, I want to go to places I can walk my dog, or I want to go birding, or I want to go for a hike. So trying to make it a little more, fewer clicks to get to where you want and more user friendly. So I think it won't look totally different, but I think in my mind, it'll be cleaner and easier to use.
I think that's important because I've found it's hard to navigate to find if you're looking, for certain things.
Yeah, and
Um,
Margot and I, we talked about fewer clicks, which I think,
Yeah.
in the beginning. Well, anyway, I don't have to go back. So yeah, so that's the goal, is to make it easier to use.
Did you say something about getting rid of maps?
Well, we currently you have to click through to a physical map.
Yep.
And so the goal is to not have to do that. We'll use, Google Maps. Most people now
Yeah.
are looking at it on their phone and they're just putting in driving directions. So you can specify through latitude and longitude exactly where you want it to go. We'll still have our trail map. That's what we're working on now, how to have the actual land bank trail map, on the page where it looks good. And people can always call if they want us to download something, but very few people download and print things out anymore. Most things happen on the phone.
So you don't think people want printed maps?
It's rare. I mean, comparatively, we will have them, but directions and the trail is pretty much all people want. And a lot of people now use All Trails or Strava or, things of that nature too, when they're out on the land.
And do you think phone reception is not an issue?
Not really. Yeah.
Okay.
Speaking of the website, it was mentioned in the stewardship report, Peter had said there was a link to the forest land and then the project at Crescent Beach. And I didn't even know it was there, so I went through, got there easily, and it was great. It was really well done. Good job, Peter and Tanya.
Peter will be debuting more QR codes too.
And Aaron as well. Tanya and Aaron both worked on that.
It was very nicely done. I learned a lot and I can't wait to get out there and see it. So.
Good. Okay.
It's one little thing to add to outreach and communication. So, the renewal committee had some excess funds after the renewal campaign. And so there was a decision that $20,000 would be going to the land bank for supporting volunteer activities, and events. Things that the land bank cannot pay for when we have events. This will help pay for that and show our appreciation. So, and then some of the funds are also going to go to the YCC.
Youth Conservation Corps.
Very good. Yeah.
Right.
So
Thank
we'll
you for
need to
that.
keep track of that 20 grand in a separate account there.
Sorry, I missed that.
We're
What?
talking about the
Yes.
grant, yeah. So we know that it's coming and going out of that same account, not intermixed with other.
Yes.
Well, that's great news, something we couldn't pay for before, so I hope we will, write, a thank you note to the committee and acknowledge that.
Thank you note to all the donors.
To the, well, yeah.
Thanks for
Okay.
sharing that, Peggy.
Question. Excuse me, I just have one question. In the stewardship report, Peter, I think there was a mention of some Native American discoveries in the Crescent Beach area. And I was wondering if that's something that would be worthy of a story when it's appropriate.
Could I just respond to that quickly? Yeah, so
Yes.
we did a cultural resources assessment focused on the forestry work that we're planning. In the course of that, there was some observations about the exposed midden that's near the shoreline, near the easternmost parking lot, and some thoughts about how we might protect that midden by capping it in some manner. So we're in discussions with the Lummi tribe and with the consultant about that, and probably are going to do that as soon as we determine, what sort of permit pathways are involved. But in general, I don't think we want to highlight known archaeological sites, to the public, just for fear that people might go out there and start mining them. But in this case, we're just going to try to protect it and cover it and avoid that area in our project. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think, many of our shoreline properties have middens on them like this. And, we didn't really explore it beyond just noting that it's exposed.
Okay, Tanya,
That's it
anything
for me.
else? Okay. Let's see, what time is
Actually,
it?
I wanted to bring up one other thing. We've been having these, community conversations twice a year, which have been, separate meetings from commission meetings, typically held in the evening. The next one, and we've typically been doing them in April and, October, November. So we've got one coming up, or potentially coming up in April. My recommendation, because these things do take a fair amount of work to get organized, and I feel like people's attention is very distracted right now. And we're just through reauthorization. I would advocate for holding off on the April community conversation and just going for one in October. This is your call, but I will just throw that out there for you to deliberate on.
Okay, thoughts, discussion on that?
I'd be really curious to hear from Amanda, Peter, everybody, the staff, about what they think we need right now in terms of more outreach.
Future or right now?
Maybe not.
No, right now and in the future. I mean.
Well, intermediate, like,
Here we
is it
are.
okay to delay? I'm totally fine with that, but I'm curious if people are kind of hearing from, I'm not hearing that people are really wanting to weigh in right now, but I'm curious. about
There's
that.
just conversations everywhere, and people just can't wait for our next community conversation meeting. Upper yards, so, no, you're never done, right? With those
Yeah.
conversations and outreach and things, so there's always the need, there's always the desire, but is it critical we do it next, like in April? No. I don't find that that's necessary there personally. I think we'll have other means for touching in with the community along the way.
Marilyn.
I just want to
I'm sorry,
present
Marilyn,
the minority view here. I feel like we have so much attention, had so much attention through the renewal period that I don't like to let go of an opportunity to keep people interested. And I also like the rhythm of whatever we've developed. If it's a twice a year pattern, then I kind of like to see that continue so people have an expectation. I don't want to give anybody the impression that now that we have renewed our mandate that we can just sort of slide. So that's my only thought. I am sorry about the additional work for staff.
Mike,
Along with the lines of what Marilyn's saying, I think we have good momentum coming off of great communications in the fourth quarter of last year around the vote. And I'd hate to see that drop off. However, I'm not sure what Doug's saying is that these aren't that well attended or popular. Should we be thinking something different? And I guess one of the things I was thinking is, we do have this annual letter that we send out. And should we have an event around that? We send out the thing, and then there's gonna be an in-person discussions, with the public around our year.
you talking about the annual report?
The annual report, yeah. So if we could, I think that would be easier on the staff. It probably would be, it's piggybacking on something that's in writing. It probably could put this thing off to late summer or the fall. If we could announce it now, that this is how we're gonna improve our communication, increase our communication or whatever. Cut out one of these events that aren't that popular, but really replacing it with something that's an annual report to the public. Just a thought.
I guess my own feeling is that, you know, for the past couple of years, we've had two things. We've tried to get around to each of the other islands twice a year, I think, for our regular meetings. But those are morning meetings, just like they all are. A good thing about the community conversations, I think, has been that they're evening meetings and folks can attend that might be working or otherwise couldn't attend a regular morning meeting, certainly couldn't attend in person. And I think that since COVID, since we've really begun doing online meetings, that's a real opportunity for a commission that serves all of the islands, even though really we don't get that much attendance. And I agree with you. I think that the attendance at the community conversations hasn't been great. I mean, we've had what, maybe 30 or 40, I don't think even that many people, as I remember. They haven't been really full.
Yeah, very, very significantly. So, and when we've done meetings by district, sometimes we have a good number, usually that's Lopez. Sometimes we have very few, it can be 8 people, on those. When we've done the joint community conversation, I think we've done a little bit better. We're still talking about 30, 40 people, maybe. Something like that. But it sounds like you're not quite ready to let this go.
There's a couple of things.
Well, Anne Marie, I'll call it you in a minute. I just wanted to finish. Had you finished what you were saying, Lincoln?
Yeah, I know. If this is obviously, as I said, your decision. If you feel like this is important to keep the momentum going, not to make people think that we become complacent, all those kinds of things, we will certainly do this. Tanya, I was going to ask you what our ETA is around the annual report. It's going to be earlier this year.
Yeah, if we stick to the timeline that I worked out with Partners in Design, I think it would drop first week of May in the post box.
We have not done it in person, correct? They've all been.
The community conversations, well, we have to, every meeting we have, there has to be an in-person option.
Yeah.
So we advertise that location. Not too many people show.
I was just gonna say that as I'm a little bit ambivalent because of all the stuff that's been said on both sides of that, but I guess my feeling is that we did a lot, in particular, you did a lot, Lincoln, a lot of community meetings to various groups going up to the renewal. And I guess my feeling is that at least the last couple of community conversations have been a little bit, they've gotten a little bit pro forma with, you know, all of the information about what we're looking for, why we select the lands that we're looking for, and so on. So I would like not to see more of the same thing unless we have something new and different news to people. The other side of my feeling is that I'd like to find an opportunity to thank the people who supported us in the renewal and tell them what the plan is, where we're going forward. So maybe we don't have to do that in a spring community conversation. Maybe it can wait a while. And as you say, people are real preoccupied. Everybody is. So I guess I'm okay with waiting, but I'd like to see some kind of a plan maybe to replace that if we don't do it in person or online, maybe with some articles, some other kind of public relations and communication with the public. It's my feeling.
You're good.
Anne Marie.
Yeah, I think given the conversations we've had about staff capacity, it's really important to kind of hear that and understand what's being said and what the director is saying about, you know, the use of the staff time. So I want to be respectful of that. I also think that some of these smaller events like the birding activities really reach an audience that is very, very important to us. Based on what I saw at North Shore last Friday, I think that was almost, it met, if you check the box on the people that were supportive of us, that was the audience, based on the surveys that TPL did for us. So I think using our time to set up more activities like that, and connecting with people on their terms. I'm also really concerned about asking the public to come together for something that isn't really serving any purpose other than to check a box. And right now, I think everybody is in overload based on the information coming out of Washington and internationally, and we've yet to hear the impact on the state. And I think that the impact on the state is going to be overwhelming. So I think we just need to be conscious of what our own staff has on the table, what our plans are, and kind of how we're asking people to engage with us.
Good. Thank you. Marilyn had her hand up, but the screen is switching around. And we just lost Marilyn.
We lost Marilyn.
Yeah, I've had
Yeah.
my hand up for a while, actually, Brian. Can I
Sorry, Amy. I
chime
didn't
in
see
here? Yeah, thanks. So, I guess a couple of things. I absolutely hear staff when they say they're over capacity. I know that feeling all too well, and it's not a good one. So I absolutely respect that. At the same time, and respectfully, I guess I see Anne Marie I have a different take on the, you know, chaos and destruction coming out of the federal government. I feel like folks are, you know, seeing our community as sort of the refuge. And I think instead of approaching this as it's a check the box exercise, I think it's really an opportunity for us to continue to build community and to say, you know, maybe the communications committee, which I hope to stay on and continue to help, maybe we use it as an opportunity to say, maybe we just run through a highlight of the annual report and maybe we highlight, hey, here are all these great volunteer opportunities to support our staff for you to engage in. And here are these great birding opportunities that we know of already. And then here's how you can go find, new events are getting added all the time. And so here's where to go find them. So I do think I support us going ahead with it, but having it be focused to sort of bring the community together and say, not only did you just support us, we're here to support you, and here's how, because personally, I think that is needed now more than it ever has been. I think there's this sort of collective sense of trauma, and everybody is really feeling like the island is a bit of a refuge, and I think the land bank is a huge part of that. So again, I'm happy to work with Tanya and the committee to make this happen. Thanks.
I'm hearing a lot of very persuasive arguments on both sides of this. I don't know whether that's helpful, Lincoln.
Can I just offer that I
Sure.
definitely have capacity to do more birding trips.
Okay. That's good.
So generous.
Thank you for your service.
So Amy, do we still have a communications committee? I think that question was raised, whether we want to continue with that, and it's a question that I think we have not answered.
I think it was a yes, and I have been, at default, is that the right word? I haven't sent that email to reestablish, so I have highlighted it with stars. So when I get back to the office today, I'll send that out so we can get back into a schedule. Because I dropped the ball on that.
So how about this as a suggestion? How about we toss that ball to the communications committee, hearing all those good arguments, and get a recommendation and a course of action from you, and maybe if we do have a community conversation, have it a little later in the year, maybe around the annual report, or else do it through other kinds of activities. But we'll leave it to you. Does that sound good to everybody?
Yeah. So communications committee, Amy, Mike. Who's the third person?
Anne Marie.
Anne Marie.
Anne Marie,
Yeah.
okay. No, yes, good, excellent.
Okay. We've got two distinct opinions on that committee, so you work it out. Thank you. All right.
So can I ask a question? So then we'll get a recommendation before our next meeting, because.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, we'd have to. just
right,
pretend.
because if it's gonna happen.
Okay,
Thanks.
okay. I don't think we're on a set timeline, though. I mean,
But if
I
there's
don't
gonna
say,
be community conversation in April or May, staff needs to know.
yeah, but I don't sense that we have to do it in April or May, but if the committee can get together and make a recommendation for our next meeting, great.
We'll have a committee meeting, and I think the goal should be really to determine whether we're gonna do this in April,
Sounds good.
and maybe what form it should be also. So come back to you on that.
Okay. So we're a little ahead. Let's take a break until 10 o'clock. Okay, we are reconvening, and we will go right into the stewardship report. So stewards. We have 2 stewards here and 3 stewards here, and 1 online, 2 online.
I'd love to jump in because I need to sneak out of here. And I think, I don't have a lot to pass on. Just that I've been away most of the last like 3+ weeks. I've had some family health issues, and I've been kind of trying to fit in work around margins. So just really grateful. My coworkers kind of helping pick up some of the slack there. So the one thing I thought I would pass on was just with Peggy's note about the Peter Forbes discussion. first that, it was Megan Howard who actually, brought this, forward, made the contacts with Peter, arranged that whole, conversation. From what I gather, I wasn't able to participate in it, so I haven't actually even seen the video of it yet, but it sounded like it was a very powerful presentation, and there's been a lot of side conversations coming out of that. If anyone is interested in that, it is a recorded meeting, and I'm happy to pass on the link to that. I think there's going to kind of out of this co-stewardship group, there seems to be quite a lot of momentum, a lot of different ideas. We're still sort of trying to pin down sort of a group identity and purpose overall, but yeah, it's just a lot of really great folks working in there, a lot of generative ideas coming forward. Outside of that, we were just chatting in the break. I've mentioned it in the past, we have with the Conservation District, this grant for some micro burns, as we're calling them. It will be kind of our first foray into having broadcast burns on land bank property. This is targeted specifically for Mount Grant, where we've been doing restoration work. And a big motivating factor to these is looking at alternative times of year to burn than typically has been done out here with prescribed fires. And that is in part that in the state in general, there's been some concern and observations of things are getting drier, and there's been a few sort of unanticipated fires that have from fall burns that have reignited, and just conditions that Department of Natural Resources and some other partners have noticed. And some of the ethnographies really point to these early season, late spring burns as being relatively common. So there's some sort of curiosity if that was a normal feature out here anyhow, of seeing what the effects of that might be. So these burns that we're intending to do, they're very small, about 1,000 square feet, in little, just kind of small radius. For the time of year and the size, these are actually far safer than our pile burns are, which is not to say that our pile burns are not safe, but just in general, all the indications are that this is a really nice, gentle step into kind of looking at some of the potentials and challenges of doing broadcast burns. So we will be doing some public process associated with this. There'll be letters going out to neighbors, a press release, and a community meeting all coming up in the next few weeks. And anticipate, in addition to the Conservation District participating with this, Department of Natural Resources folks should also be jumping in to kind of explain their interest in funding this activity.
Doug, are those volunteer events potentially, or are they just professional staff?
Well, the potential is based on the burn workshop, the cultural burn workshop that happened last fall, has generated a lot of interest. And so we're trying to explore is if these can kind of simultaneously support another sort of cultural burn workshop that would be more formalized outreach. The previous one was kind of organic how it came into being. And that has not really been fleshed out yet. There are two different partners involved. The Tulalip tribe was officially part of the grant, and the Samish DNR has also been assisting with planning. So we already have some tribal input on it, but if we do this more formally, we want to make sure that we put it out kind of with equal invitation to different tribal groups with interest in this area.
Okay.
So I understand the cultural part of these burns and I think that's really meaningful. What's the other purpose? I mean, is this to prevent fires out here? Is this to improve the health of our forest? What's the main benefit besides the cultural side?
Yeah, and there's a lot of different directions that you could take that. The sites we're going to be burning in are actually grassland. It's not in the middle of sort of more of the forested area. And these sites have had fire as a component of their processes for millennia. And it's just been in the last couple hundred years where we have been suppressing fire. And so we've removed an element from those ecosystems. The available data is sort of mixed in terms of what we can anticipate from doing those burns. And this one, really, the study design for it is not rigorous. The funding that's coming from it is more from the fire behavior, fire safety sort of realm, rather than the ecological side. We, Eliza and I, kind of tried to see if we could get some even basic parameters of pre-burn vegetation analysis and things, and that part just really didn't quite work out. And I think that that's okay. I think we can do some qualitative sort of analysis of this. But in general, fire in grasslands is going to historically would have helped keep some of the successional elements from taking place of moving into shrubland or forest. It brings nutrients, recycled nutrients back in. It creates open space for seed to come in. There's a lot of, from a historical perspective, a lot of benefit. There's a lot of challenges in today's environment in these, particularly in our region, because there's so many exotic species that really thrive in those conditions as well. And so that's something I think we're going to be monitoring. And one of the reasons to keep these very small is to keep them manageable in terms of the post burn and how we think about vegetation management and sort of see the response, in this patch versus, right next door to it where we have areas that haven't been burned.
But the purpose isn't necessarily to make our island safer. Fire.
Well, that is a purpose, but these specific ones where we're doing 1,000 square feet at a time is not. But this is a chance for us to observe and learn some things that could be leading us to doing other types of burns in the future.
But the clearing of trees that are burned is definitely part of removing those, fine fuels.
Yeah, no, that's, and I
So there is
understand that. I think
definitely a
that makes-
fire
That's totally,
safety
I mean,
element.
that's really important. I mean, that's basically fuel, and you need to get rid of it. And I was, took that hike out there, and I was telling Lincoln earlier, pretty impressed with how beautiful you guys made that look and how much safer it seems to be, with the healthier trees that's still there and the other one's gone. But I was just, now that we're starting to expand it, I was just curious as to what the ultimate goal was, because we want to measure ourselves against that, here's what we learned and.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, I think that this is a learning opportunity is what I would stress. And yes, there in the long-term view, there is the safety issue as we're working into more forested areas and the pile burning we're already doing, those spinning activities. But again, these particular birds are not here birds. That's.
Doug, do you anticipate a lot of public concern about this?
Oh, you never know. I mean, we certainly, as following the, huge fires in California and whatnot, there could be people who are really concerned, but I think it's a great opportunity. I would say, and this is maybe my opinion, I'll stress, I don't see any future where fire isn't part of the landscape in the San Juans, whether we're doing that through management or as fire, like wildfire becomes or potential of happening out here. It's happened in the past.
I guess I'm just mentioning that
So-
this is a relatively new thing for us to understand that somebody in our island is purposely starting fire, and what kind of a program we have to communicate that.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's where we really wanted to stress doing these outreach and doing the meetings so that we can describe our purpose, describe the measures, the planning that is involved, and really stress that, you know, the rationale of doing these small and the timing and things is really geared towards that safety issue, and that we're long-term trying to move us in the direction of being more resilient to catastrophic wildfire.
Are we reseeding these areas?
For these ones, we are not because of the timing. You know, if we're doing burns in June, essentially, that's not a really great time to try and put anything down to try and germinate or establish. So I think we're going to really just evaluate these ones for this year, and look towards next year in those sites, whether we need to do some additional seeding, plugging, that sort of.
In the fall.
Mhm. I mean, normally there would, the timing of this is, for some, but not all, native species would be, at or going close to going to seed. But it's one of the questions that I have with this is that, from the ethnography side, these burns happening, and the harvest happening kind of right as you know, Camas in particular, is sort of right at the end of its bloom, and there may be being seeds, and there's discussion about, you know, purposely seeding these sites, and then the fires happening kind of right on the heels of that. Well, that to me, like for kind of current technology, would actually push us more towards July rather than June. But there's, again, we have a lot of indications, whether that's from tree ring data, from fire scars and dendrochronology, to ethnographies, to a whole kind of wide range that there were these fires happening potentially, you know, in say mid-June. So.
Okay, thanks, Doug.
Would you expand on your comment that you don't think that the islands are a likely place to have a catastrophic fire?
Oh, no, I'm sorry, I might have misspoke.
Maybe I misunderstood.
No, catastrophic is one thing, but I just said that I personally I don't see any future for the islands where fire is not part of the landscape. It already is, I mean, in small scale, and to some degree, we've been lucky. To some degree, we have kind of a lot of climatic things that sort of work in our favor. But with climate change and projections, the risk is going to continue to go up. Our population is not getting any smaller, and the broad majority of fires that are started in the islands are started from people, and from a lot of that has to do with landscaping activities. And we've seen a few fires just in the last couple of years, you know, right adjacent to Mount Ben Preserve. There was 2 different fires, 2 years ago, that each was over, I think one was 3 acres, the other one was 2 to 3 acres. So again, I feel like there's an ecologist from the Forest Service, Paul Hesberg, out of the Wenatchee Research Station, whose thing is, how do you want your fire? How do you want your smoke? And I think that is applicable in some of these areas, that if we are moving in a direction where we kind of understand that there is this likelihood of fire happening on these landscapes, that if we can learn and try and figure out ways to have that happen in ways that may be more desirable, that might make, you know, our natural areas more resilient and our community safer, rather than waiting for these fires to take place in ways that are unanticipated and maybe have more negative consequences.
Doug, I don't mean to cut this conversation short, but I wanted to get to the other stewards before our executive session. And I just noticed that Councilmember Fuller has just joined us. So I want to get back and give her time. Councilmember, do you have anything that you'd like to say to us?
Good morning, everybody. Yeah, my apologies for being remote again today. I had a doctor's appointment this morning, which is why I'm running late into this meeting. So my apologies for not being here earlier. There's nothing major by way of update from my side on the council side, with the exception of the what you probably already know, which is the North Shore Conservation easement came before council for a first touch, and so it was appreciated, Lincoln's explanation of what that is about, particularly for the two new council members. And so I think you have a council that is interested and very supportive of ongoing work of the land bank. And I think something else that was brought to our attention, particularly on getting this transaction completed between the San Juan Preservation Trust and the land bank, is that we need to make sure going forward the timeliness of the transactions, such that different parties that are involved between the prosecuting attorney's office and the land bank, and also the role of council, that we are processing, those real estate transactions in a timely way that doesn't potentially compromise donors' investments, contributions to significant real estate transactions of that nature. So what as I'm stepping on as the new council person of the land bank, what I'm realizing is, there's a lot for me to learn in terms of how real estate transactions take place. And there's a lot for my seatmates to learn as well. And that as on the county side, we want to make sure that we have processes that are efficient and enable the important partnerships that you undertake with different key partners that bring donors into play, that those processes are going smoothly, and that on our side as a county organization, we're not holding anything up. So so actually what I think Lincoln and Angela and I will be organizing is an opportunity for council, for the San Juan Preservation Trust and the land bank to come before council sometime in the coming month or two to inform council a little bit about the relationship between the two organizations, how you work together, and how we as an organization have a responsibility to support and facilitate those partnerships when you're dealing in land transactions. So that's something I just wanted to share with you. Came up in the last council meeting as council moves ahead with adopting that resolution. And let's see what else. I've also spoken recently with Lincoln about my interest and desire to take stock of some of the important stewardship activities that are evolving on some of the lands, see some important work that's been done already, and plans for further stewardship of lands on the different islands. And I know that Council Member McVeigh is also interested in seeing, for example, North Shore and Orcas. But so I'm just going to continue to climb on my learning journey as a council member that represents you on this commission. And if you have any questions for me, please let me know.
Okay, appreciate your recognition, Jane, of the need to facilitate that process. I think that's going to be good for all of us moving forward. Thank you.
For sure, yep.
Okay, stewards, I want to leave a little bit of time for discussion of our future agenda items. So that gives us about 10-15 minutes for additional stewardship reports. So who else?
I'll just jump in briefly. So I think the stewardship report captures Orcas happenings pretty well. So I don't think you need to talk about that at all. I'll just say that I think things are going very well for the start of the new year. So happy with where we're heading. I did want to take a minute to reflect on the wetland mitigation thing, just to share some thoughts that, specifically, I think wetland mitigation needs in the county are only going to increase with climate change and, further development. And I think that ideally such projects would happen on land bank properties only as a last resort. And that I think it's in the community interest for us to work with other departments better on planning future mitigation sites, specifically public works and environmental stewardship. And as much as I think it would be a little bit torture to be on such a committee or something, I think I'd like to offer up that I would be interested in that if there's interest in the land bank and, among other departments in doing that, taking a longer term look at potential mitigation needs in the county, the next 2 decades or something like that. And then working to identify funding and then properties that could be acquired specifically for that purpose. And then ultimately, developing an advanced mitigation bank, for the county. I recognize that's not the land bank's role, but I think we're going to, these mitigation projects take a lot of staff time and they have impacts on preserves. And I think it would just be really great if we could get ahead of it and work on a strategic plan for mitigation in the county and plug into it as appropriate. That's all I have. Thanks.
Planning ahead always sounds like a wise idea, Peter, and so maybe through land bank staff, you can advance that idea to the county. Sounds like a good one. Thanks. Okay, Amanda?
Brad, can I just?
Yeah.
Just, Peter, I'd be happy to work on that with you.
Thank you.
Envisioning a spreadsheet.
That's our joke with Peter.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
I think, this has to be really, I think, led by Public Works ultimately, since they're the ones that need the mitigation, but hopefully we can start a conversation or continue a conversation.
Okay.
Okay, I'll jump in for Lopez. As Peggy mentioned earlier, I've been working out at Richardson Marsh with plans for opening for public access this year. Have not set a date for that yet, and part of that just relates to putting in a small parking area, which I laid out and was able to get Peggy's feedback, so that was really helpful. Also getting, mobilizing for Watmow opening, which is set for May 3rd. And Tanya and I put our heads together for just a really kind of rough outline of what that day might look like. So we'll be in touch with more details as they come together. Tyler was able to come to Lopez. We've actually been trying to make that happen for months, pretty much since he got hired. So it finally happened. And we were able to visit a bunch of preserves and get some of the chainsaw work for trees that had fallen. We were able to do that together. So it was a really great day. Thanks, Tyler. And also, lining up more help. I do feel like I can ask other staff to come to Lopez and to work on projects and get that help as it's needed. And we're also going to be hiring for the seasonal position very soon for both Lopez and Orcas. Those are kind of the main things on my list for today. I think things are going really well, and shift in the weather. I see just more time outside and tuning up the lawnmower and all that good.
All right, thanks, Amanda. Careful lifting those rocks. All right. Tim.
Quick question, Amanda, will you be, when you talk about getting seasonal help, is that a person for each island, or are you sharing a person, or do you get how would that be arranged?
Yeah, it's 2 positions, and that's how we've had it the last few years. So Lopez is about 20 to 24 hours a week, and I think Orcas is at 16 hours a week from about April to September. It kind of depends on when we actually get the hiring completed for what the exact dates are.
Thank you.
Okay, Erin, Eliza, anything?
I can go very quickly. I think mine is in the stewardship report. As you know, a lot of my job involves managing the Salish Seeds project, and in the winter, that lightens up, although we're doing a lot of planning now for growing season ahead, so, I kind of jump in a little bit and help with various projects. I'm doing some, preliminary writing for Katy Mountain Management Plan, which will be coming up this year, so trying to get a little jumpstart help with that. I'm working on improving our signage at the office, so people know that it's a public office and that we're there.
I'm so excited about that.
It's taken us plenty of years, but
And then it's
you
a
know, we
public
got a lot
park.
to do,
Yeah,
so
I know.
anyway, maybe, yeah, later this year, we'll have some, more professional signage, and then, third thing I just wanted to highlight, the wildflower growing guide that we created last year has been very popular, and our print run is basically gone, but we got a nice little grant from the San Juan County Master Gardener Foundation to reprint it, so, that was a nice, partnership there to get the word out about how to incorporate native stuff into anyone's space. That's all I have.
And I've had some requests about that and had to tell them that you were out.
And it is
So-
online, so I know, I mean, it's really nice to have a printed copy, so until we get more,
It
there's
is.
always the online
Yeah.
version, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
I can just loop us back around, I think, to fire and, been participating in the Community Wildfire Protection Plan update. So there was an initial one, in 2012, and the Conservation District secured money to do an update of that plan. And it's brought together Department of Emergency Management, DNR, the fire districts from each of the islands, as well as members of the public and, other agencies, BLM. It's led to a lot of good discussion about how we prioritize, resources and areas for treatment, as well as public education around, primarily when the risk is real. We call red flag warning days with low humidity and things are cured, and pretty much all of our starts are human, accidental. And so just working on, there's a document, there's been some great staff, under the Department of Emergency Management is a gentleman with a lot of fire history, in suppression. He and another, individual has done some modeling. It's pretty well known from other fire environments, where you kind of take that leap from a grassland into a forest is primarily where things can really accelerate to the canopy. But it's working with, homeowner associations and trying to give people the knowledge and the basic skills to protect their homes, as well as the different individuals collaborating on how to provide resources, and where to be strategic about doing project work.
So Erin, when are we gonna see a public draft?
Well, I'm actually trying to hold it up a little bit so it can get a little more polished, but, it's coming out fairly soon. I can't
Okay.
speak to that. That'll be the Conservation District's call.
And they'll put it online or the county will?
I think I can follow up on that. I'm not sure
Okay.
how they'll do their
Yeah.
outreach. We're kind of at this pinch point where we're trying to get it. And it's been a difficult process with, kind of editing by committee and, things like that.
Uh-huh.
But, we're getting really close, and yet there's still some kind of, critical points to flush
Okay.
out. But I think having been involved in this process in other places and lived in a fire environment, worked in fire, there's the document, but there's also the public education process that, is so critical. So hopefully getting people to really understand what suppression resources are available, and as we become more, of a fire environment, what we can learn from other areas. And so we're even talking about, how do we protect areas from, retardant drops, which can happen, you know, and you don't want that in your fish bearing streams and that level of detail for strategy.
So
I
you'll
didn't
let
really
us know
answer
when
your
I,
question, did I? But
no,
Okay.
you'll let us know when the draft comes out.
definitely.
I'm
Yeah.
particularly interested in seeing the modeling.
Yeah, there's a lot of work that went into that.
And do you anticipate that we'll have red flag days here in the county?
Yeah, I think we have, I should fact check myself, but like 8 maybe on average a summer.
And are those advised to not perform certain activities during those
Definitely,
times?
yeah.
So is there a method right now for that information to get to the public, or is that part of the new plan, update?
I think there is a, you know, the fire districts are gonna announce that, but whether that is adequate, if there's more things to do, there's been talk about having stuff at the ferry landing. Because of, acknowledgement and even among agencies where we invite people on our lands during certain, risky times, so. That kind of, that's where this kind of community building around it is pretty important. Thank you. Yeah, and there'll be opportunity to comment too, which would be really valuable.
Yeah, have you thought about, signage during heavy fire risk times at our trails?
We have it,
Reinforcing it, we do that?
we do, yeah, it's not quite in, I think it's more general, but we could work with other agency partners to.
Would there ever be a situation where in some of our riskier forest areas and hiking areas that we actually close them during red?
I can't speak to that,
Right.
where I lived, we would. And this was Southern Oregon, I mean, we burned 40% high severity every summer, you know, we had a lot of lightning.
Yeah.
But where we're at with that now, it's not necessarily to create alarm, but just really strong awareness for when those days are.
Yeah, I guess it's a decision that we would make for our properties.
Right, yeah.
And I don't know if it's been discussed in, you know, in your group or any place, or whether it should be discussed. And you know, I've never been much concerned about it until I realized we do have some pretty heavy winds. And I see what happened in Palisades. And that was, you know, that was a community, but those are mountainous treed areas. And they fueled a lot and like somebody said earlier, these come from people, fires generally, and we don't get a lot of lightning in the summertime.
But you could, you know.
Yeah, and it just, you know, I'm thinking ahead and want to make sure that we think ahead as best we can as we're doing this stewardship work.
Quick one, Peyton.
Just quick comment, I thought it interesting that our county emergency manager, Brandon Cowan, has indicated that we have a fairly low risk
Yeah,
of fire at this point because of the humidity of the ocean.
definitely, and the winds, those east wind occurrences are quite rare as well. And that's not just Brendan, that's all of the, fire personnel. But that's not to say that when you hit that critical window,
Right.
people are oblivious, that you wouldn't have something devastating. So it's really a balancing act between, you know, not wanting people to readily imagine, Southern California, Southern Oregon experiences, but be mindful, of those windows.
I'm all in favor of that.
Yeah, it just.
Thank you, Erin. I want to move on and have a brief discussion for a few minutes on the future agenda items, because we have a whole list here. And I mentioned to Lincoln that in order to make some progress on these, I'd like to start prioritizing and ticking them off and devoting some discussion time at each of our upcoming meetings. Contrary to what our minutes said, none of these are my ideas. They all They all came either from the strategic plan or from our retreat, and I just noted them down. So, what I would like from you all is some notion of what you'd like to tackle first in terms of priorities and discussions.
And may I add something
Yeah.
to that? I'm wondering, the last item here is budget and financial guidelines,
Yep.
and we've already established a committee to work on financial guidelines. It brings to me the question of should we have small committees to bring information back to the full board to talk about some of these subjects? That might be part of what you would be interested in finding out.
Well, we can leave that as an open question for the commission, and see how many people might volunteer for such committees. But I think that you brought up, Marilyn, that particular question of, budget explanation, I think in our January meeting, maybe.
And we have a meeting scheduled for
and-
2 weeks from now for our little committee.
Yeah, and I thought that was kind of a general update and explanation from Aaron and you, for everybody, so that we're all on the same page, so to speak.
Yeah, I think that, well, I don't want to
So,
go off on this one
sounds like
subject.
that's in
Talk
the
about it
works.
later. Yeah. in the
So,
works.
and
Talk about it
and
later.
it's coming soon when you're ready. Okay, how about other things? Does everybody have the list in front of them?
I do.
Yeah.
What if we had everybody pick 3? And we added it up and saw. Most people pick, you know how you do it in a planning meetings?
You know what,
Yeah.
Jane has her hand up.
Who does? I'm sorry.
Jane.
Oh, yes, go ahead, Jane. Council member?
Hi, thanks, Brian. Yeah, I hope that you don't all mind if I throw into the mix two that I'm particularly interested in, given you know how council has been working with the land bank in the last 2 years, but also with thought to our work for the coming year. I'm quite interested in having a discussion with Francis Robertson about
Yes.
Tribal relations. And as you probably all know, we have the tribal engagement and consultation plan that environmental stewardship worked quite hard to develop over the course of more than last year. And council adopted that at the end of last year and adopted a commitment to moving forward with that engagement and consultation plan in the course of 2025. And it strikes me that this, you know, the work of the land bank and the work of this commission is well placed to help our county engage in some discussion about how we move forward in consultations with different tribes, particularly as it pertains to preserves that you're going to be opening up to the public. And I'm thinking of Watmau here specifically. I know that more than a year ago, you all had some discussion with tribal members about the importance of that preserve, that parcel of land. And so I think sooner than later, it would be a nice opportunity to have Francis come and talk to us about preliminary responses that she received from tribes to the letter that she sent out, signed off by council to, I believe it was 14 different tribes in the area. And she has received some responses to that letter, but not many. And I think that it could even be potentially helpful to Francis to hear from all of you on, you know, if we haven't heard from some tribes, why, and what might we do to potentially to engage in some dialogue with staff of the different tribes. If we've got some preserves that might be opened up that, you know, you might want to have some conversations with tribes and whatnot. So from my perspective, I would really love it in the course of, say, the first quarter of this year, or, you know, up to, you know, say up to the first third of this year to bring Francis in and have a really interesting conversation with the commission about, you know, how can it be a partner in some of these engagements with tribes. So that's one thought I wanted to put out there for you. The other one that I'm particularly interested in, and with the new council, I think could be useful for ongoing building up of knowledge about your work. Your important work is is having a discussion around the stewardship plans that you have. And I think I noticed, if I'm not mistaken, that sorry, I'm just looking at setting stewardship priorities and management plans. That's I think that would be also a particularly interesting topic that council might want to hear a little bit about further, in the course of the maybe first half of this year. But anyway, I just wanted to throw those things on the table for you all.
Great, thank you. There are a couple of these items that are actually already in process, I think, and on the agenda. As a matter of fact, I think that Frankie was invited and included on a previous agenda and couldn't make it. I don't remember exactly what, but that's definitely going to happen. We're all looking forward to it, so I think that that's a definite and can happen anytime. So thank you for those suggestions. Okay, other commissioners, priorities? Peggy.
Well, I would definitely second that, the focus on the tribal relations. I think that's really important. And I would say that's my number one. I would want to add, I don't know if this is well, so given what's going on right now, it's like, what's the status of our funding? In not our REIT funding, but our partner organizations and federal funding. So I just would like an update on that somehow. I don't know if the discussion item, but that we are kept in the loop.
Well, it sounds like the other item that's on the agenda kind of automatically and is in the works is this budget item. So maybe we can include that. And I've got to assume that that's going to be a changing situation as we go along. Yeah, okay.
I know we have 2 minutes to go into executive session.
The other thing that somebody spoke to earlier in the meeting was the staff capacity and organization study. So, and that's something that came from the strategic plan as a work item for this year.
Right.
So I would second that.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I'm sorry, I'm interrupting, but I think that's a really important follow-up to our work last year. And I think it's really connected to our financial and budgeting piece. I would like to start by requesting an organizational chart, which just helps those of us who don't work in the office day to day to understand, what the flow is. I think most of us have a pretty general sense, but an org chart is usually sort of a starting place for that kind of a conversation.
Hey, Marilyn, if I can also just chime in, I think that's a great suggestion, and added to that, position descriptions to go along so we know.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amy.
Okay. What else do we have?
Anne Marie has her hand up.
Oh, sorry, Anne Marie.
Yeah, I went ahead and I put this in chat. My top 3, going with what Mike said, I think that's a really good organizational way to go, Mike, is the staff capacity, the budget analysis that was discussed at the retreat, which is a little bit different than what we normally get at the meetings, and then the consistent stewardship standards. So those would be my top 3.
Stewardship standards, yeah.
Brian, could we add all the stewardship into one big discussion so that we could also talk about priorities and management plans?
Makes sense to me. Combine those into one item.
Yeah, have a stewardship day.
Big item.
Have a big day.
Stewardship day.
Lunch
Okay.
service. Yeah.
Yeah, the other part of that was a suggestion that's come up before for, I think it's on here, infrastructure standards. So this came up during the discussion, I think, of the fence at the Deer Harbor Preserve, or the chain. And we talked about having, well, there are several things that it applies to. So talked about having a standard for our infrastructure throughout the islands. So.
Amy has her hand up.
Amy?
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to just kindly suggest and recommend that I hear everyone, including Councilwoman Fuller, about the tribal relations are clearly an important issue. I work for a treaty tribe. I know that all too well. But I would perhaps suggest that not be scheduled till at least April or May, and that you give tribal staff plenty of heads up. I know that I received the letter and the plan from Frankie, and there was absolutely no way nobody had time to comment. Like, tribal staff are beyond maxed out at capacity. So I think there's usually a desire to want to engage, but in all the priorities, playing defense and then wanting to do offense, it's just, you sort of triage things. So I know from Swinomish's perspective, we'd like to engage, and I think there are other staff like Tino who came in person a couple of years ago now? So I think we just want to have as much advance notice as possible. So I would suggest not until April's meeting at the earliest, potentially even May. Thanks.
Well, that raises a question in my mind, Amy, which is, what is the question? What are we looking at? We had a very interesting session with tribal representatives 2 years ago, I think. And my own understanding of this was that we were going to hear from Frankie on the county's approach to tribal relations. So I guess the question that begs for me is this a discussion with the tribes, or is it a discussion with the county about what the county's role is and what the land bank's role is? And is that a part of the discussion with the tribes at this point, or does that come later? I don't know, I'm just asking the question.
Yeah, I think as Councilwoman Fuller correctly puts, I haven't read the plan as either in my role as staff or as a land bank commissioner. I definitely would want some time to do that. I just think it's very, very important for the county to not assume that just because it's passed a plan that everything's okay. This is not, my guess is if there's been very little feedback on the letter, that's because very few tribes had the capacity to actually engage on it. That's my assumption, working with so many other tribes throughout Puget Sound. And so I think, maybe it's a both and not either or. I think it will be important to have that conversation with the tribes and say, hey, maybe you didn't have an opportunity in the past. Let's talk about, here's our approach. Does this really work for you? Are there things you would tweak? How would it work best for you? And I'm not saying that's gonna like wholesale open up the plan to some major revision, but I do think taking that kind of respectful approach and just opening up a dialogue, I think could be very, very beneficial. So maybe it's sort of it's going to be an iterative, ongoing conversation. And so just thinking about it that way.
I see that Councilmember Fuller has some thoughts on that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Amy. I mean, I completely concur with what you're saying, and what you're saying is actually really what I was meaning. I do not recommend that the Land Bank Commission start engaging in conversations with different tribes on one-offs or anything like that. Actually, what
Jane, I think we lost you. Can you hear us? Okay. Well, until she gets back, Peggy.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear what Jane has to say, but I do see this as a several step process. I would like to hear from Frankie as a beginning and totally hear what Amy has to say. Just because the county has adopted a plan does not mean that that's the plan.
Yeah.
So I go back to what the conversation with the Wabanaki that that whole thing, moving at the speed of trust. And the speed of trust does not have anything to do with us coming in and saying, this is the way it's gonna be. So I think we really just need to take it step by step, but because the county really wants to be the lead, I think we need to at least engage in a conversation with them in the beginning, and then
Yeah.
I think, Amy, you can help us, decide when to bring.
I'm not sure that we want to, or that the county wants us to be the forum for a total big intertribal conversation.
And I would agree with that. I would suggest that we might put it on our agenda every other month to get an update. See if things are moving along until at some point we're gonna step in and have to have action plans that will participate in to support the program for the county.
Well, let's put it on our agenda once.
Yeah, what I mean.
We've got a lot to put on our agenda.
Exactly, but that's, I'm saying, I don't think we need to move this to our.
Yeah.
Our active agenda, but,
Okay.
but it does mean that we should be updating ourselves, or as a group, I'd like to hear after 60 days, what's happened.
Yeah.
Maybe it's nothing, maybe just like we're having this discussion today.
Well, I assume that when Frankie is ready, we're ready to have her. So.
Yeah.
So we'll let staff coordinate that and bring it as she comes. Okay.
Listen, I think we really need to move on.
Okay, yeah. Jane, you're back with us.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know what happened. I just got kicked out of the meeting again. I see you've already furthered the discussion on this, but I just was trying to make clear that I was simply suggesting that Francis come and speak to what the plan says, get your thoughts and feedback on it, and as an important part of the county organization, just for the commissioners to be aware of it, and aware of the letter that was sent out. It may not even land on all of you well, you might have some issues with it, but indeed, this is a very iterative process. But you are an important partner that interacts with tribes, and I thought you should, at a minimum, be aware of what environmental stewardship is attempting to do in support of the county to engage with tribes in a more coherent and consistent way going forward. So I think it's important that you just hear from her. That's all I was suggesting.
Okay, we will do that. Thank you. Okay, good discussion, and we will leave it to staff, I think, to coordinate putting these on the agenda for future discussions, maybe one at each.
5-second question.
5 seconds.
Can we always talk about the acquisition matrix criteria? Lincoln frequently goes through it with us. Do we really want to revisit that as a, we need to change things, or would we have already done that?
Well, that one I think is my idea, because
Excuse me.
Guilty. I talked to Lincoln, I had some ideas for some other criteria, and then my immediate afterthought was, well, wow, this is getting really complex. Maybe there's another way to look at it. I suggested looking at putting it in a database, but we'll get there when we
I was
look
just trying
at.
to simplify, Brian. I don't want to get in the way of your complication.
I appreciate that. Complicated enough.
Yes.
So, in the interest of simplifying, good discussion. We now need to recess into executive session to talk about potential land acquisition, and go into executive session because that may affect the price of future acquisitions. So we will recess and reconvene only to adjourn at 11:15.
Brian, we do have the second public comment. There's no one, I see one person who might be a member of the public.
All right, very quickly, is there any public comment before we recess? There is none, so we are now recessed into executive session.
Well, hold on, before you do anything, I don't know if Andrew's actually there, so
Yeah.
let's put him in. Open.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, wait, I gotta pause it. Yeah.
All right, our executive session is adjourned. The commission has made no decisions. And we will now adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good meeting, thank you.
Thank you.